You're listening to the Goop podcast, made possible by our friends at Blue Diamond. We're big snackers around the Goop office. You know the drill. 3 o'clock rolls around and you find yourself reaching for whatever is lying around in striking distance. Last resort snacking, as it turns out, usually isn't all that satisfying, which is why we decided to give our snack drawers a makeover and stock them with Blue Diamond whole natural almonds. I go for handfuls before meetings. Often multiple handfuls if I'm honest, because they're that good. Between the fats and minerals in Blue Diamond's nonpareil supreme almonds, they're significantly healthier than popping candy or chips throughout the day, and they actually tide me over until dinner time. Head over to goop.com for some recipes made with Blue Diamond whole natural almonds. Hey again, it's Elise Lunan, Goop's Chief Content Officer. Every week on the Goop podcast, Gwyneth or I sit down with leading thinkers, top doctors, researchers, and visionaries. We talk about breaking down barriers, and we learn a lot. We typically drop new episodes every Thursday. Today is the last special episode in a 3-part Tuesday series. It's a conversation that happened live at our In-Goop Health Summit in Vancouver. There, I got to sit down with a nutritionist, an MD, and a naturopathic doctor who have taught me so much about gut health. The first person you'll hear me chatting with today is registered dietitian Karlene Karst. She's based in Port Moody, British Columbia, and she's the founder of C-Licious Omega-3.
I think long-term, you have to really adopt an eating plan that's going to work for you. It's about lifestyle changes. It's not about losing 10 pounds now and then gaining 20 back in 6 months.
In addition to Karlene, you're going to hear from my friend, the naturopathic doctor Nigma Talib, who splits her time between London and LA. She's known for helping her patients resolve both skin and gut issues. Her book is called Younger Skin Starts in the Gut. She works with me on my wine and dairy face, and we talk today about why so much of how we look and feel comes back to what we eat.
99% of the time, that skin problem is gone within 3 months. Mm-hmm. And that dermatologist that we're giving them steroid creams, that's just a Band-Aid approach. That is not getting to the root cause. Mm-hmm. And that is what we, as practitioners and as writers, and what we're trying to get out there is that the root cause is sitting in your gut.
If you've been following Goop for a bit, you'll likely know today's final expert, our OG doctor, Alejandro Junger. He's a cardiologist by training. He was become a real trailblazer of functional medicine, and specifically within the field of gut health. He's the founder of one of the original detox programs called Clean. He's a best-selling author, and he's one of the people in this world who I could talk to forever.
And the way that I discovered all these things, they were not because I was a purist and, let me think about how the wild human beings would eat. I got really sick from eating junk, and then I went to the doctors and I got tons of pills, and I said, wow, I don't want to deal with that. So I started looking for things.
With that, let's get into today's talk. Karlene, let's start with you. What's your dietary philosophy? How should most people be eating?
Good question. I think that I feel we need to eat a lot more plants. Mm-hmm. And plant-based eating is here to stay. It's not just a trend for 2018. And I think there's so much wisdom we can find for our bodies when we incorporate more real food, whole foods. It sounds simple, but it's actually not.
No, it's not.
When you talk about like dairy and the wine and all of these things that we love, I think that on a day-to-day basis, in and out, we just really need to focus on real whole food and avoiding artificial preservatives and coloring. If you're going to eat meat, grass-fed, healthy oils, healthy omegas in your diet. And just really look at those foods, making every bite count. So every time you eat, how is this nourishing your body? Because what you put in your mouth every day influences how you feel. Mm-hmm. And we all know when we've indulged too much or eaten things that don't serve our body, how it can lead us to the end of vacation saying, I can't wait to just eat salad. Yeah. So we really just, I think, need to make that a conscious part of our day.
And how do you feel about it? It's interesting because you see it probably. I don't always have physical reactions, but you kind of know what I'm doing, not just from Instagram. But for you, what are you, besides those three, how do you like people to eat?
Do you know what? I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all model. And I think we all need to be more intuitive with our bodies. And we know when we eat something, it's like, ooh, that wasn't good. And you get bloated, or you get constipation, or you get, sorry, I'm going to be talking a lot about shit today. Sorry, if you don't mind, because that's my job. Sorry, I hope nobody was offended by that. But, it's like you get those reactions when you eat particular foods. And so for me, I also see people making the mistake where they're like, okay, I'm going to eat salads and be really, really healthy. And in my training as a naturopathic doctor, we study traditional Chinese medicine. And warming foods are really important, especially when we're going into the, fall season here, is that it's very hard to digest raw food in general. It's very difficult. And especially most of us in here, I think every single one of you in here has had heartburn, constipation, diarrhea, bloating, gas, all of that stuff. All of us experience that. So most of us have had digestive issues. So if you're having digestive issues, eating raw food might not be the best thing for you. Plant-based food, exactly what Karlene was saying, is so important, but warm it up, steam it. Give your digestion a break and give it some support. So, what might be good for you might be not good for you. So try to eat more, be more intuitive how you feel when you eat something. Is your heart racing? Are you getting a skin reaction? Are you bloated? Are you constipated after eating? So all these things are, you are your best own doctor. You know what you can, and we go into denial sometimes, don't we? It's like, that was okay. That piece of cheese was great, but now I have an upset tummy. So just listen to yourself. That's what my advice would be.
Dr. Junger?
Well, I think the whole subject of what to eat is really confusing.
Yeah.
Because there's so many opinions, there's so many books, there's so many philosophies, and Ayurvedic philosophy with the doshas and the Chinese medicine philosophies, and then when we get lost, right? So I try to simplify things by telling people what not to eat, right? And the way I think about it is like this. I have an exotic animal zoo in my house. And the way I feed them is the way that people that go out in the wild and observe and study how these animals feed themselves in the wild, and then they write manuals about it, and I read them, and I feed them, right? The problem with human beings is that we don't know how we are designed by nature to eat, because there's no more examples of human beings living in the wild the way nature designed us to live. So until we find that, I'm really not buying into one philosophy of what to eat. And I end up giving my patients advice of what not to eat, right? And it's kind of simple. Do not eat anything that your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize as food.
Yeah, so true.
Right? So that leaves out 90% of the products that we consume. You go to a supermarket, and if you take a bird's eye view, 90% of the things that you can buy in a supermarket come in a box, in a jar, in a tube, in a can, right? And they're full of coloring agents, smelling agents, and texturizing agents. All these preservatives, conservatives, all these chemicals that are not really there to help your health. They're there to help the companies have a longer shelf life, or be more attractive, or make you more addicted to them, right? So that leaves us with only the periphery of the supermarket that your great-grandmother would recognize as food, with fruits, vegetables, and some animal products like fish, and and even those you got to be careful, because those are not grown in the wild mostly anymore.
Right.
They're grown in fish farms and feeding lots, so you got to be careful.
Let's talk for a minute about chronic inflammation, because I always thought I ate pretty well. Then I did clean, which if you've never done it, it's 3 weeks of essentially an elimination diet. So you have to be really considered. I mean, it's a lot of plants, clean, like no processed food. And I remember after, I felt amazing. Actually did it for 5 weeks.
You still look good.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you. and I tried to have dairy, which is my favorite thing after wine. And,
Yeah, right.
and I was like, what the hell? Like, I was so ill. I mean, because I think it's hard on the daily, when you eat sort of everything, it's hard to distinguish, like, what's a real moment. But I was like, I don't understand. I've never had this before. And you were like, well, you cleaned the walls.
You did, because
Yeah.
that's why you said, I felt so good. What is the difference between how you were feeling before and feeling so good was what you lost by reintroducing the things that don't make you
Feels
feel
not
so
great.
good all the time.
Right. So do you eat like that all the time?
No. I'm a pig. And I have kids, and life is difficult. And the way that I discovered all these things, they were not because I was a purist and, let me think about how the wild human beings would eat. I got really sick from eating junk, and then I went to the doctors and I got tons of pills, and I said, wow, I don't want to deal with that. So I started looking for things, and I'm still struggling, because I like a lot of things that make me sick, and I'm addicted to some of them.
Yeah, I understand. What about you? What was where was the moment of connection between food and how you felt?
When I was younger, I had so many digestive issues, and I got the cop-out diagnosis IBS, which is really BS, isn't it? It's a BS diagnosis. It's like, okay, well, and I saw a naturopathic doctor, and then we did some food intolerance testing, which I really believe in because it has helped me and thousands of my patients. It's not the end-all and be-all, but it gives you an idea. And I had a few foods show up, like garlic. I wasn't able to metabolize it. I also did some DNA testing, and it made me understand why garlic was so hard for me to digest, and how I would feel like I was hit by a truck after with it, like brain fog. And I eliminated all those symptoms within 3 months, 100% better after seeing gastroenterologists. Then I thought, this is the kind of doctor I want to be. I want to be a doctor that's going to get the root cause of why somebody's feeling sick. Because anything you put in your mouth is going to affect you. We know our gut is our second brain, so it's going to cause you to have anxiety if you eat certain foods. It's cause you to be depression. I mean, you have just as much serotonin in your gut that you do in your brain. So when we get depression or we get anxiety, it's coming from here. And so I learned that, growing up as a teenager and going through all these issues. What we're like when we're teenagers with anxiety and depression and, digestive stuff, and felt so much better. And I thought, wow, this is what I want to do. This is something I want people to be aware of. And that's why I went into medicine. And that's how I followed eating. And of course, I'm like you. I do the same thing, and I eat I'm not a pig, I'm a rat. Well, the Chinese zodiac. But I love to eat, but now I'm really aware of what makes me feel good. And it's like a high when I eat things that make me feel good. And when in Rome, if I go to Italy, I'm gonna have pasta and wine. Let me
every day.
be sure. Every day.
Maybe twice.
Maybe twice.
I was just there, I know.
And it's different when you eat it in Europe as well, because again, this preservative is a massive
There's
problem.
no GMO.
There's no GMO. And you even look at the studies they did on rats, because I love rats so much. They fed them the same diets, 2 groups of rats, but they put slow, insidious amounts of these toxins preservatives that we eat in our food, just a small amount. And those rats that got that actually gained weight. So whenever we go on these fasts, and you're saying you go on these diets, if you don't get rid of the preservatives in the food you're eating, you're going to continue to feel sick, you'll plateau, your thyroid levels will be affected. So anyway, this is a long answer to your question. Sorry, I get excited about this. And so it affects everything you do. And I was able to see that in myself. And I thought, I want to help everybody else. I want to make sure that everybody gets the same treatment. But I also like to eat certain things that are in my book that I tell you not to eat. Sometimes 80-20 rule, 80-20 rule.
80-20, I think
Yeah,
that's
it's true.
totally reasonable.
Right?
Yeah, you got to enjoy. Right?
Yeah, when you're restrictive, you become obsessive,
Totally.
which is not helpful.
Yeah.
So, Karlene, do people primarily come to you for weight loss or health concerns or some combination of the two?
I would say that over the course of 20 years and being in the nutrition field, it's varied. And I think now, just based on the demographic that I'm in, a lot of women's health issues is a big part of what I talk about. And of course, every time I speak, we always start with the gut, because it, as Hippocrates said over 2,000 years ago, it is the caveat of all healing. And I mean, this is common parking lot talk at my kids' school is women are exhausted, we're lacking energy, we're feeling burnt out and stressed out. I mean, my 5-year-old once said, "Mommy, are you stressed?" I'm like, okay, I think I better stop using that. Or because it's constantly, I feel so stressed. And I think that's such a huge part of women in life and everything that we're trying to do and trying to balance. And the food connection to that is enormous, you know, supporting your adrenal glands and eating to support your gut health and incorporating more supportive nutrients and fermented foods. And these are just so important to really help heal and nourish. And everything in the body is connected, you know, and I think if you start by healing the gut, it will have a huge trickle effect outwards.
Speaking of stress, how do you make eating well, and whether to say that the focus is exclusively on gut health, how do you make that in of itself not stressful for people?
Yeah, it's true, because we talk about food every single day because it's such an integral part of what we do is we eat, and that can be stressful for people. And especially, you know, if you not just have your own self to feed, but you have other people in your home, you have children and they're picky eaters, and you're feeding people on busy schedules, and it is very overwhelming. And then you got to think, oh, was this a real food, a whole food? Was there preservatives or artificial ingredients? Like it's an extremely overwhelming thing. So I think you need to start slow, be easy on yourself. It's always the advice I give people. Like, you might leave here today feeling inspired to change so many things in your life, but just start slow and just be good to yourself and let it be the journey. I mean, for myself, it's been over 20 years. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition when I was in my late teens, and I was like the low-fat diet queen of the 90s. You know, like that was what everybody did. Fat-free yogurt, fat-free chips, fat-free cookies, as long as it said fat-free. To me, this was what I was supposed to be eating, and instead of eating fat, I was eating a ton of sugar. So you combine that with an autoimmune condition, which has tons of inflammatory response in the body. I was a disaster. I had no energy. I was in pain all the time, taking pharmaceutical drugs, taking Advil 8-9 times a day, literally. And I thought, if I feel like this when I'm 20, how am I going to feel when I'm 40s? So it was the beginning, and it was like slowly changing things and adding more good fats into my diet, which is why I became so into omegas and the healthy fats and how healing they are, especially when we talk about inflammation. I mean, the omega fats are so important for decreasing the inflammatory response in the body.
So let's talk about inflammation, gut, and sort of what inflammation in the gut leads to.
Well, the thing is, we talk a lot about what to eat or even what not to eat, right? But we gotta understand that there's another thing in play, which is the gut, the health of your gut, right? And sometimes we might be eating the perfect diet and the healthiest foods, but we will not process them the right way because the gut is not healthy. Meaning, there is hyperpermeability or leaky gut. There is microorganisms, bacteria, fungus, viruses, parasites, whatever it is that is there. Or we even have the good bacteria, but in the wrong ratios, you know, in the wrong percentages. So then we won't be digesting food very well. And even healthy foods can interact with our immune system in the gut, which is the biggest part of our immune system lives within and around the gut. So it may be not enough, because most of the people walking around in the modern world today are walking around with some degree of a broken gut, of an unhealthy gut. And it may not be enough just to start eating well, because gut will not just fix itself, because there's things that may be lacking that are very specific. There's things that may be necessary to get that level of healing, right? So the reason I say this is because a lot of people start eating healthy, start following their advice, and then they don't get the good results and they give up, right? And that is maybe the reason why it's not happening.
So what do you do?
Well, you gotta seek help of somebody who understands how to figure out what is wrong with your gut and then how to heal it. Right? And it may be that you need to get rid of certain bacteria, or plant the right bacteria, or feed the good bacteria with prebiotics, or get rid of parasites, which is a huge problem that a lot of people don't even realize they have, or help the body heal the hyperpermeability or leaky gut. It may be as simple as taking extra glutamine, which is something that is very difficult to find in the diet in enough quantities in order for the body to heal those tight junctions that the cells of the lining of our intestines should have. Or it may be something that seems unrelated to the gut, like high levels of heavy metals, mercury, lead, that don't allow a healthy flora to thrive. So there's a few things that are, not a few, there's a bunch of things that are in play in terms of getting your gut to a healthy state, in which then a good diet will really benefit you.
And how do you feel like if you have something chronic going on or you have something mysterious going on, like that is where you start? Like what are the symptoms that you would sort of...
The thing is,
Tell us.
Well,
tell us everything.
Think of it this way. If you have a garden or any plants in your home, you know that when the leaves or the flowers or the fruit are not thriving and healthy, you don't really go and treat the leaves and the flowers. And you go and look at the root and the soil around it. The root would be like our gut, because that's where the plant sucks its nutrients from. And the gut is where we suck our nutrients from. The soil is our food, right? So that's where the solution is. And the reason I mention that is because the leaves and the fruit and the flowers are as distant as it could be from the roots, but that's where the problems start. So problems in your skin, problems in your brain, problems in any organ, in any tissue of your body, usually, in the biggest percentage of cases, start somewhere in the gut. And by correcting that, then everything corrects itself, right?
I also find gas and bloating is such a common problem, and I don't know if people necessarily connect that to, maybe I have dysbiosis or a dysfunction in my gastrointestinal tract. I mean, how many people by 4 o'clock in the afternoon feel like they're 5 months pregnant because their stomach is just bloating and they're feeling so gassy and distended? And so even small signals, which are actually a sign of a larger problem, are just really being in tune with your body and knowing how it feels and how it acts on a daily basis.
And what's normal.
Yeah.
And what's normal, yeah.
When I met my husband, I was like, this is not normal. And he was shocked. I mean, he grew up in the Midwest with a father who was also, in his mind, normal. And I'm like, that is not normal. That's not normal. Nothing about this is normal.
Yeah.
You guys can appreciate how much my husband loves being a character in
the show.
And he took out gluten, which was enough for him to become far more normal. But I think that a lot of us are programmed to be like, I always feel that way.
Right. You don't know what is normal until you make a change.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of my patients say. And that's why I ended up writing my book, because I kept giving handouts to my patients, and I said, that's it. I'm going to create a clear, correct, protect program. And this is what you were saying. You want to clear out the bad foods. You want to clear out the parasites. You want to clear out the bacteria, the candida. And then you want to correct, and you want to put in the good bacteria. And then you want to protect the gut lining with things like glutamine and foods that are rich in glutamine. And if you follow the 3 steps, that's where you can start to see wellness. You can start to see patients feeling better. And I think that's part of it is if, people are following diets and fads, you really have to go to the root. You really have to go to who's living in your gut. And God knows I've done thousands of stool tests on patients, not me personally, but I've sent them home with a kit. And I've reviewed in my 20 years of practice, I don't know how many thousands of stool test results. And the interesting part is, somebody will say, well, I don't have any digestive problems. I just get migraines, or I get eczema, or I get acne. Can you help me? Because you're like the skin doctor, aren't you? And I said, yes, but it's coming from your gut. And more than often, I'll put them on the Clear, Correct, Protect program based on assessing their stool and seeing who's living in there and who shouldn't be living in there. And 99% of the time, that skin problem is gone within 3 months. And that dermatologist that we're giving them steroid creams, that's just a Band-Aid approach. That is not getting to the root cause. And that is what we, as practitioners and as writers, and what we're trying to get out there is that the root cause is sitting in your gut. That is like 100 trillions of bugs living in there, and they're good for us. They benefit us. They're the best antibiotic is the bacteria in your gut. And when you take antibiotics, it causes dysbiosis. It causes a unhappy environment, and you get other symptoms, and it goes on and on and on. Autoimmune, leaky gut. All of us in this room have leaky gut, FYI.
Yeah.
It's and it's only one cell thick, by the way, the epithelial cell lining. It's like one cell.
It's a paradox.
Right? Isn't it a paradox? Because the good things that come in, the nutrients, the vitamins, but also the bad stuff gets in as well. So we have to be really careful what we're putting in here because it is going to go in your bloodstream and it's going to affect you.
We'll come back to our chat in just a minute. Skincare. 2 little words that get a ton of airtime over here at Goop. Our passion runs deep. So deep we created our own line of powerful non-toxic skincare, published a book called Goop Clean Beauty, and just launched a drinkable collagen powder. So yes, we're mindful about what we put on our bodies, but we're equally tuned into what we're feeding them. And for better or worse, what I eat inevitably seems to show up on my skin, which is where delicious superfoods like Blue Diamond's whole natural almonds can come in. An easy source of skin-friendly vitamin E, along with minerals and fiber, this is a snack that can help keep skin looking and feeling good. And it doesn't hurt that Blue Diamond's non-Perel Supreme almonds are addictively snackable and satisfying. You can blend them right into smoothie bowls. I pack them for midday pick-me-ups when I'm traveling. And in the Goop test kitchen, the team uses them when they're cooking too. Visit goop.com to get the full recipes our editors whipped up with Blue Diamond whole natural almonds. Okay, back to our gut health talk.
Speaking of antibiotics and sort of how on one hand they're so amazing and life-saving, and then on the other hand, like I grew up in the age, also being a doctor's kid, where it was like, take a Z-Pack. Let's talk about like fecal transplants and what's happening there. You said you wanted to talk about
love
shit.
that subject.
I totally
love fecal transplants. But do you think that something like fecal transplant, or the idea of taking a very healthy microbiome from someone else and planting it in a sort of decimated gut, do you think that'll become really, like, I know they're studying it extensively at UCLA and at other places. Do you feel like that will become a mainstream?
I personally don't know if it will become a mainstream, but I'll tell you something. If you do a fecal transplant on somebody to somebody else, from somebody to somebody else, and the somebody else who's getting the transplant doesn't eat exactly like the one that gave him the transplant, it ain't gonna work.
Interesting.
Yeah, because if your bacteria in the gut are decimated and you have dysbiosis, there's a reason why. And it's most likely because of what you eat and what you don't eat. And of course, there's antibiotics and there's preservatives, whatever. But if you get the bacteria from somebody and put them there, unless they start living like the donor, it ain't gonna work.
And also, if you were genetically the rat studies, the genetically obese rats. Say I was a neutral rat and you're going to be the genetically obese one, okay? Say you gave me, because I don't want to, you gave me your microbiota and I'm a neutral rat. I'm going to end up becoming obese. So you have to be careful what microbiota you're getting, because if you get an obese one, I mean, I wouldn't mind getting a lean rat one any day.
And so with depression, and so with
all of that.
many things, yes.
You get everything, right? So you have to be careful whose microbiota you're getting.
So there's no magic pill.
But if you had C. difficile, for example, you had a bad bacteria and you were hospitalized, antibiotics only work to certain limits. So you can get a donor and it will clear up that infection quicker than antibiotics. So there is something in it for the future.
Definitely there is.
But I don't think it's going to be totally mainstream, but it'll be one of those things that will be available and should be available. But you just have to get the right donor, not a genetically obese rat.
I don't want a fecal transplant anymore.
Are you sure?
Let's talk a little bit about the ketogenic diet,
Oh,
like science of eating, intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
What are you interested in? And what do you find is like widely applicable?
you know what's interesting? The ketogenic diet's become very popular in the
I
last
know.
18 months. Has anybody tried keto here? Essentially, the premise is you eat high-fat diet, low-carb, moderate protein, and you help your body produce something called ketones. And ketones are these water-soluble molecules, and they can actually bypass into the brain. And so people report, yes, a lot of times people are starting it to help their body lose weight, but one of the side benefits of it is they feel so much more energetic. They feel that brain fog they've had has been lifted, and they can concentrate, they're laser focused. They just overall feel better. And I've had so many consumers tell me, I did the keto and I stayed on it because all of a sudden had more energy in the day. And yes, I lost 20 or 30 pounds, but the feeling I had and the energy levels I had were just addictive. And I think that initially getting into ketosis can take a couple of days. It's actually quite easy to do. The switch over to eating a high-fat diet has to be done very carefully, because it can't just be like all of a sudden you're just eating tons of fat. You have to have really nourishing coconut oil and medium-chain triglycerides, for example, help your body produce ketones very readily. So MCTs, and when you have coconut oil as an example, it goes right to your liver and it's burned for energy. So it functions differently in the body. So there are certain oils and nutrients that you want to incorporate when you're switching over to a keto. But I think long term also when it comes to food, I think if you're looking at something and saying, there's no way in 6 months I can be eating like this, I don't know if it's the right plan. I mean, yes, you might want to wear a bathing suit on your Christmas vacation and feel a certain way or look a certain way, but I think long term you have to really adopt an eating plan that's going to work for you. It's about lifestyle changes. It's not about losing 10 pounds now and then gaining 20 back in 6 months. And so I think the ketogenic diet can definitely help you get there. And then I think there's a modified version of the keto diet. And I would say that that's more similar to how like I would eat. Less of the, definitely less refined carbs, really nourishing fats, moderate levels of protein, and can be very beneficial.
And you can do it through intermittent, right?
I'm going to burst the keto bubble.
Yeah, do it.
So when I moved from South America to New York after medical school, and in South America I was doing taekwondo every day. I was in tip-top shape. I moved to New York and I started eating bagels and crap, and I became mildly obese, right, while I was doing my cardiology fellowship. And I couldn't stand it, so I went to a trainer in New York, and he had a six-pack, and I said, what do I have to do? How long is it going to take me? And how much is it going to cost me to become? I showed him my gut, and I showed him his, and he said, well, you know, it's that. And this guy taught me something incredible. In the 70s or early 80s, there was a group of bodybuilders in Gold's Gym in Venice, California.
I used to work out there.
Right.
Yeah. and some of them were Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lou Ferrigno, and all these guys that became Mr. Universe. And they had a scientist with them called Dan Duchesne. And this guy was really, really smart. And of course, every bodybuilder knows that the livelihood depends, and winning competitions depends on increased muscle mass and decreased fat percentage, right? And the fat is mostly under your skin. So you have to increase your muscle mass, you have to decrease your fat, which is two opposite things. You have to tell the body in one hand to build anabolic stuff, right? And on the other hand, to do a catabolic process, which is burning fat. And that is kind of confusing. And this scientist said, he started looking at who are the leanest people around. And he realized that the leanest people around were type 1 diabetics that go into a crisis called ketoacidosis, right? When they don't have insulin around, right? And this is something that can kill them, right? And this guy said, whoa, what if I recreate this condition of ketoacidosis, and because ketone bodies actually are produced in the body when the body doesn't have insulin and cannot use carbohydrates as an alternative fuel to carbohydrates. And it's actually a survival and adaptive mechanism. And in the long term, it kills you. So yes, it'll make you lose weight, it'll make you burn fat, right? But easy on the keto wagon, right? And then what happened is Dan Duchaine, who wrote a book about it called The Opus Diet, and if you're interested, you should read that and figure out how it can. Then he captured the attention of a doctor called Dr. Atkins, who said, I'm going to steal this idea and use it and make some money on it. And then there was a doctor that said, well, Atkins is not very healthy because it puts you too much into acidosis. And so they introduced a little bit of carbohydrates. It became the South Beach diet. And now there's a whole rebirth of the keto thing. And nobody really fully understands what's going on. So easy on the keto diet in the long term. In the short term, it may be great, just like Atkins.
Intermittent fasting, though.
Well, the thing is this: intermittent fasting, ketogenesis, paleo, all these movements that are now famous, and detoxification done in the right way, they all converge in one thing, which is the formation of ketone bodies. So there is something about the formation of ketone bodies and putting your body into that state that agrees with our genetic composition, because we are still genetically very similar to what we were thousands of years ago. And thousands of years ago, most people say, because nobody really knows, that we were like the rest of the animals running around the planet looking for food, eating it when we found it, and then looking for it again until the next time we found it. Therefore, there were imposed times of fasting, and there was episodes of feasting, right? And during the imposed times of fasting, obviously you go into ketosis. So going into ketosis, forming ketone bodies, there's something about it that really benefits the body. Now, where is the limit between forming ketone bodies and going to ketoacidosis, which is what type 1 diabetics do right before they die? Yeah, I don't think anybody really understands enough and looked at it enough to just jump on that wagon and say, oh my God, I want to be keto for,
So get off the wagon, guys.
And no wine on ketogenic diet.
I know. Well,
if you're only doing 20 grams of carbs a day, there's no...
Do you love it? I'm just kidding. No wine.
I know.
No gluten. What do you think about fasting? Do you integrate that at all?
Well, honestly, the thing about fasting, the intermittent fasting that I like, is it gives your gut a break. Our gut needs a bit of a break. And if you do it, there's certain fasting that you can do, stop eating after a certain time at night and then resume your eating in the daytime. But always start with warming foods. I just think that people are there's so many diets. And again, you need to do what's good for you. And you're going to know what works for you. And I think these intermittent fasting diets, they can be tough on some people. Because people are creatures of habit. And then we get into bad habits when we're doing those kinds of diets. So I think, there is exactly what you're saying. I mean, I was going to say same shit, different pile. At the end of the day, like it's like all these diets are the same, right? There are these
You
keto.
potty mouth.
I know what's going on with me today.
You're
I
such
did-
a lady, and then that's why I like
and my
you.
mom's here too, so sorry, Mom.
No, it's true. I find that I naturally fast, so I just kind of go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Listen
think
to your
it's funny.
body.
Yeah, it's like
Do you
there's-
fast in the morning?
Yeah. My dad was always like, if you're not hungry, don't eat.
Right.
Even though so many doctors are like, or not even doctors, I don't even know where some of these things come from. That's the interesting thing about our culture, like the sugar, like the low fat. Yeah.
So
I don't
weird.
know. I mean, I guess they're
Breakfast, lunch,
manufactured.
and dinner is a cultural.
Yeah.
It is.
Invention.
It's a
What we
cultural
were
invention.
programmed to do, right?
Yeah.
But I
totally.
think the intermittent fasting is really good for a lot of people for the whole health of your gut and
Yeah.
giving your gut a break. Most people feel really good doing that.
Yeah. Is there anything, any breakthroughs, anything that you're really excited about, anything that you want everyone to do?
I am actually very excited about what you called my attention to, which is those two father and son that are working on studying the fungal flora in the gut. Remember that? Mm-hmm. And I'm waiting for the right moment to go visit them. Where are they?
Do you
in
remember
Seattle? Where are they?
Yeah, Dr. I can't say his last name. What is it? Guy. It's part of Biome, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm dying to go visit them. Because you introduced me to them, they invited me.
Yeah.
I just want to go and see, because apparently it's not just about bacteria. There's a bunch of healthy fungus that should be living in your gut. And this is what these people are working on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
and
fascinating.
and from the little conversation that I had with them, it sounds like it's breakthrough, fascinating stuff.
Interesting. They're fascinating. Are there
So
any
fascinating.
tests that you routine? I know you do stool tests. Biome is a stool test. Like, what's in your arsenal? Where do you think people should start? Labs?
I definitely think we should start at the doing stool tests at least. I mean, unless we come up with something more sophisticated, looking at who's living in the gut, the balance between the good, the bad, and the ugly. It really, really does affect how you feel. And we can see all these chronic illnesses, autoimmune, fibromyalgia, all these people with these symptoms that no matter what they do, they don't feel better. I think the gut is a really interesting place to start, and I think the fascinating research around the gut, there's a lot of things we don't know.
Oh,
that's
I think they're
happening.
just scratching the surface.
We're just, finally it's becoming really, you know,
Just like
Yeah.
with the foods,
Right.
everybody tells you what to do. I told you what not to
Yeah.
do. With tests, everybody will tell you what to do. I'll tell you what not to do. Don't do food allergy studies, because those are at best confusing, at worst a big problem, right? Because the thing is this: you do a food allergy test. First of all, you don't know the foods that they tell you are allergic to. You don't really know if that is true or not. And if it is true, once you correct the problems in your gut, that may not be the problem.
That's right.
absolutely.
But very few people really do that. So then it's a life sentence. You say, oh no, I cannot eat blueberries, I cannot eat chicken, and it's stuck in your head, and then you even have a psychological reaction to it.
But I think it's
So
the way you
avoid
present
yourself.
it.
Are you going to go to the mat?
I totally understand what you're saying. I think if you do it properly, and again, with exactly what you said, you could have a problem with blueberries because you're having leaky gut. That intolerance, once you fix your gut,
It'll go away.
It'll go away. But I like to take the burden off the body initially to get rid of some of the foods. And psychologically, you need to counsel the person. You can't just have a random, and it has to be a good lab. And you also have to understand the test is not foolproof. There's 15% false negativities, and there's a whole psychological thing around it. But what I find is when you give people the hope that they can start to feel better by eliminating some of the foods, they will then do everything in their power to then eat healthy there on in. So it's one of the tools I use clinically, but it does. I love what you said. It has to be explained properly. It has to be, there's a whole psychological thing around it
And the cells are turning over all the time. So it's like we get another chance to rebuild. And I think that's the silver lining in health, and why nutrition and natural health products and food can be so impactful. Every 3 months, your body and your cells are continually rebuilding. And I think this is huge because you can get better. And you can feel better.
Well, the body has an innate ability to heal itself if given the right environment.
Yes.
That would be.
Then you can feel better. Will we look like you? Just kidding. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for joining us today. I know you couldn't see Nigma, Alejandro, and Karlene, but I don't think I'll ever moderate a better looking panel, or a wiser one. Definitely check out their sites and books and head over to goop.com/thepodcast if you want to see more on gut health. Tomorrow, the day before Thanksgiving, I'll be back on the podcast with someone who has changed the way I think about gratitude. The following week, we'll have 2 podcasts, one on Tuesday and one on Thursday, so be sure to tune in. And just tap subscribe to make it easier to keep up. If you like what you heard today, please rate, review, and share with your friends too. Thanks for listening, and talk soon.